Let's see if this thing is nice. Okay. YouTube Studio. Okay. Okay, so test. Okay. I think it's supposed to work. Okay. So two important things to discuss. The agenda will incorporate the first angle, which was raised by one of the ghost whales, Emmanuel, regarding C's, the impact on the Web3 space. And good morning, everybody. Then after this, the second topic, I'll just walk you briefly through the journey of what's happening with the current testnet. Like, what is the testnet status? How are we surviving ourselves? And what you guys should be expecting in the very nearest future, because I'm personally messing with it and I'm personally seeing how screwed up it is. Good morning, Mr. IDK. And it's not screwed up from perspective of screwed up. It's in a positive way. It's just requires attention and focus. And the more we all are investing our time and focus onto running a node, the more I'm realizing why each node is priced at such high valuation. But we'll get to this later. Okay. So let's first of all start with VCs. Emmanuel actually sent me a voice message, and then I asked him to kind of like try to summarize in the text. And so the point goes like this. Let's paint. Yeah, not paint. Let's paint. Yes. So the point is this. The point is, okay, how about we try to partner with VCs? Maybe that's a way to go, because VCs at this point of time are the ones who are really helping move the needle, right, regarding the project. And we exchanged some opinions, and there are some agreements, and I'm pretty sure there are lots of disagreements. I'm pretty sure there are lots of disagreements, but they're just not being vocalized. So I would love to address this. And Emmanuel, if you're listening to this today, and anybody else, please chime in. Please don't be shy. Like, this is a discussion here. We have a lot of insights ourselves, the team. I mean, also some council members, because we are deeply in the industry, deeply involved, and we just see what's happening, and we see stuff under the hood, right? We're not just reading the news, although we are reading the news as well, but we're also analyzing stuff. And Emmanuel's also, I think he also is under the hood of a number of projects as well. So there could be a point where we agree to disagree, but I hope we agree on things. But please chime in if you guys, have opinions, feedback, etc. So it goes like this, right? So if a project does not have VC support, if there's no VC support, then the project is dead. So let's try to get the idea is, let's try to get as much VC support as possible. And for those of you who don't know, about 2 years ago, two and a half years ago, actually, March or February of 2022, I was invited to San Francisco. I was invited by ex-CEO of a huge private company, huge, and with like development oriented, by the way. The estimated value of this private company is $1 billion. An ex-CEO, you can imagine, a pretty important man. I was invited for, I think, 10 days. to stay with him. I was literally staying with him at his place. Um, you know, trying to get to know each other, and of course, the discussion has been about Ghost. And at that point of time, we were offered. We didn't get a term sheet. The term sheets typically appear after you get some type of verbal handshake. And then the term sheet could then be negotiated, discussed, etc. It's a whole game here. That person was connected to the founder of Twitter, one of the founders of Twitter, and that ex-founder of Twitter has an investment fund. I was personally introduced to a co-founder of that investment fund. So I was personally introduced to a person who works super tightly with the co-founder of Twitter, not X, of Twitter. So super connected dude, and he's been discussing a potential acquisition of the whole project, and then pivoting that project into something B2B. Despite huge success in what he did, that person still had and potentially still has significant amount of misunderstanding of how Web3 works. And overall, lots of experience of the entrepreneurs, even serial entrepreneurs, could be just luck. There's a great book, Beat the Crowd, by Kenneth Fisher. And he talks about the top investors. And he's like, listen, most investors out there are just lucky. Like absolute majority of the investors just lucky. And he gave a great example. He's like, let's assume we give every single person on the planet a coin. Every single person. And every single person flips a coin. Tail, you lose. Heads, you win. So heads, you win. And tails, you lose. Now, just based on probability, there will be somebody. Well, he talks about 10 heads in a row, but like for the sake of the example, let's do 20 heads in a row. Right? Somebody, and more than somebody, how many? Essentially, 1 out of a million people will just by pure luck, by pure chance, by pure probability, get 20 heads in a row. So that person will 1 million times his or her net worth, right? Let's assume every single head is doubling your net worth, and every single tail you lose half. And of course, somebody will get 20 tails and will be completely lost, like completely, like essentially almost zero. Like essentially, the net worth will decrease by 1 million times, by a factor of 1 million. And then Kenneth Fisher continues. He's like, okay, so if you get 20 heads in a row, which is again increasing net worth by 1 million, you start with 1,000, now you have 1 billion. You start with 10,000, you have 10 billion, and so on and so forth. The people who pure luck got the heads 20 times in a row will start writing books about the rituals they took, the practices they had, the habits they generated, they whatever, in order to get the heads, right? The people will start finding certain patterns where the patterns just simply don't exist. It's just pure luck. Oh, I drink juice, orange juice, every single morning, and that's how I'm getting my heads instead of tails, right? Or I have to do yoga, and that's how I'm getting my heads versus tails. So of course there are certain people, with skill, certain people with intellect, rare ability of finding the product market fit, rare ability of seeing the future. But most entrepreneurs are lucky. Most entrepreneurs just got in the right place at the right time with the right people. So the Chinese proverb actually says right place, right time with the right people. Right people is the third important component. Now, same thing appears with the VCs, right? So VCs are also subject to luck, right? So they're just investors, right? That's the same, they're the ones who are flipping the coins. And some VCs could, easily get, success 20 times in a row or not. And then, of course, they'll be trying to tell us how to do things. However, is that repeatable? Like, if it was repeatable, if people could learn that, um, then a lot more people would be able to learn that. Right? And then sometimes the investors say, well, you have to figure this out for yourself, blah, blah, blah. However, the luck component could be responsible for 98, 99, 99.999% of the success. And kind of the prehistory goes back to that ex-CEO of that super valuable private company, where just because the person is successful doesn't mean anything. Well, let's put it differently. Just because the person experienced success does not mean anything. Because from understanding of Web3 and Web3 architecture, we as a team saw major flaws of how that specific solution that has been generated for Ghost was completely minuscule. When the person was explaining to me how he saw Ghost to be used on the B2B, spectrum, like it was just completely misunderstood, like complete misunderstanding, complete misalignment of what Web3 is. Just because the person is successful or has been successful, experienced one success or two successes or three successes, does not mean that there will be future successes in the future. So discipline always trumps talent or luck. So we did have engagement with VCs before. The numbers, of like the amount of acquisition discussed, has been in the tens of millions of dollars. But the pivoting has been weird, and the potential of Ghost is just so much more. And it's not that we completely declined the kind of the offer, but it was more like due to, how to say, like, if we are talking about some type of acquisition, we need to make sure, because also acquisition, right? Like, somebody offered, like, let's assume $7 million for like some type of stake. Don't you think that $7 million is going to be cash, right? Don't you think this $7 million is not going to be part of stock or some type of convertible note? Convertible note, they give you a loan of 10%, and then that is then converted to equity, or some type of like, let's do some type of stock deal. So when those deals are discussed, when you see like, somebody raised $30 million, somebody raised $50 million, don't you think they got $50 million in cash, $30 million in cash? Typically, it's tranches. Typically, it's some weird if statements. Typically, it's like, let's do the first tranche of $1 million, and then based on the KPIs, we'll then release the rest or not. So all these legal freaking troubles and all this legal situation. So just because the number sounds high, even in the news, somebody raised $250 million, unless it was an ICO. Because ICO, you actually did get the money. Like, ICOs were the most successful fundraising events potentially in history. Because it was retail, it was crowdfunded, and you actually got the money right away. While with VCs, good luck. You see some company raise $200 million, they do not get the cash. Sometimes that's a stock raise, sometimes it's convertible notes, most often than not, it's tranches. And tranches based on OKRs and KPIs being met or not. So it's all pretty weird. And when you are talking to VCs, some people say, like, it's like marriage. So you need to find the right partner, because if you don't find the right partner, oh my goodness, it's going to be a shit show. So we definitely had experience with VCs. That was just the most vocal one. It was the closest one to, because the person was super connected. The person definitely had the ethos. He was an ex-CEO of a similar company. Like, if I tell you the name of that company, you would understand why. Like, it was not privacy oriented per se, but super close to that. Like, even in the name, it had something like that. So just, it could have been a perfect match, and still it was not exact. So, and then what happens with those VCs, right, is kind of because of ZIRP, zero interest rate protocol, whatever it's called, or policy, zero interest rate policy. The money became cheap, and what started happening is hedge funds started entering the space. And hedge funds think differently than VCs. So VCs also get lucky, but at least VCs are there for longer term, because also, like, who is a VC? You have different calibers. You have You have angel investors who just invest a little bit, and that's a great business right there. They invest 50K, 250K, maybe up to a million checks. At super seed stages. Then that's essentially pretty much like the seed rounds. Then you have round A's and round B's and round C's, right? Then you also have IPOs, right? So like where investment banks come together. So you have and private equity. So you have a lot of different layers of VCs, and depending on the level, is the earlier the better. Those VCs are typically there for the long term and typically have the long term vision for the project. Easier to work with, and could offer a lot more focused support. Like I would say, not better, but focused support. They will just typically try to do better. I try to allocate more time, more focus, more more introductions if needed. Of course, the magnitude of these introductions is often much lower than what would you experience from big time VCs like say Sequoia Capital. But still, like it's about the community, right? It's about product market fit, potential user adoption. So those uh, eh, low quality type of introductions and help could actually be very instrumental. Now, what happened was when the hedge funds came in, and the hedge funds came in because now the money is free, so you can go to a bank, the bank can offer you a line of credit, and since majority of markets are overbought, you look at stock market, bond market was pretty much inactive because it was zero interest rates. Real estate has been pretty overheat and still like now it's even more. Commodities same, and you would like some hedge funds would start looking into essentially startup deals, right? And the math goes like this: you invest in 100 projects, and one project, kind of pays for like one project like really pays for everything. Then 10 projects are kind of covering the operational expense, and 90 projects fail, right? Like some strategy like this. And then those hedge funds would look into a more short-term payout. And when crypto came out, it's not that crypto came to the rescue, but when crypto came out, now hedge funds have an IPO phase early on, so they don't need to get registered with the SEC. They don't need to get through all the due diligence. They don't need to, hire an investment bank, pay them 7%, like do all that fun stuff, do the road shows, like blah, blah, blah. Like none of that stuff is there. Now what hedge funds can do, they can do an IPO through any token issuance, right? The TGE event, right? That's an IPO right there. And the barrier to entry for this IPO is so much lower with crypto because with IPO you really have to, even if it's a small cap stock, you really need to hire proper accountants, legal, blah blah blah, register with SEC, whatever the registrations. And once you're a public company, you need to do quarterly reportings, annual reportings, and all types of things. When it comes down to crypto, you essentially say no to American investors. You say no maybe to Chinese investors. You probably limit OFAC countries. At this point of time, on the list could be North Korea and Iran, etc. No judgment here. I'm just saying what it is. And pretty much, if you offer this to Singaporean investors or even European investors, which is difficult now with MiCA rules, you can get access to the trading of a security, right? And I'm not saying security versus utility. I'm just saying it's a security means the price exists. And since the price exists now, it's a security. And as a hedge fund, your natural expertise is in trading, market making, etc. So you know how to do it as a hedge fund. And so what you do is you act as a VC, as a lead investor, as an investor. You invest in a given startup, crypto startup, and then nothing matters. The product does not matter. The team does not matter. It's all about the token allocation and marketing. So token allocation, you get certain token allocation as a hedge fund, and you introduce pretty good marketing. And of course, depending on that, since you have token allocation, you're able to manipulate the markets, right? Like let's just call it like that, pumps and dumps. Difficult to do with more liquid projects, and of course easier to do with different, So um, so it goes like this. You pump and dump. and how this works, those VCs. Again, because we just call them VCs, but we need to make massive, massive differentiations who is what. So you have token allocation. You go to a DEX, right? And you pump liquidity of, say, $1 million, right? Now, the price goes through the roof. Once you add more marketing fuel, right? Let's say the community adds another 5 million, the users, etc. And that's where you dump it on them, right? And you don't need to engage the centralized exchange, for example. Or maybe you do. If you do, and actually most often than not, these guys actually did incorporate centralized exchanges, which is, in our book is even worse, because centralized exchanges give access to the distribution to the users. And then, of course, that kind of creates this whole Ponzi scheme thing. Why? Because you are making money from these guys. Like, you, as an entry hedge fund, make money from the additional 5 mil, whatever, like in this specific example. And the more we look into it, the more we realize that SEC is actually maybe even doing certain right things when it comes down to like going after projects like that. Because if it's projects like this, who is the bad guy? Not necessarily the project, but maybe a hedge fund. Maybe a VC is a bad guy. But what's it called? Does SEC go after the bad guys? After the VCs? I mean, they're doing something currently with I think Engine Horowitz and a couple of other VCs in regards to in New York, in regards to, I forgot, just in regards to a project. I keep forgetting which one, just recently. So they're kind of going after them finally. But how many small VCs do we have? Like, is it really the project that is at fault, and not the investor? And of course, then there are also some questions. Is the project working together with the investor? And then there's also a question: is the project and the investor the same entity, just split legally into multiple different entities, but in reality is the same group behind the project and also behind that kind of the pump? So that's what's happening with VCs. To entertain this bullshit means that we are here for a very short term. I was talking recently this week with another project that that may need some cross-chain solution. They're connected to the governments in Latin America directly, and it seems like the project is to do something around like kind of like government functions through some type of kind of online virtual solution, like getting your residency card, getting your passports, getting your driver license, paying taxes, potentially registering marriage and stuff like that, right? So like all those services to be placed online, and it seems like this group of people have access to certain countries in Latin America, not the big ones, not Argentina or Brazil, like some smaller countries. And essentially the contract is to design such solutions, and they are thinking about using blockchain. But if it's going to be blockchain, chances are they'll need some type of cross-chain solutions, and Ghost is right here. And the question that I'm asking, and I didn't get the answer. I did get the answer, but they didn't answer. Like the question is, what's the time horizon of this solution? Is it 5 years or is it 30 years? Right? Are we planning to have a game for the next 50 years? Is that the future that we bring in? Right? Because if you came to Steve Jobs in 1970s, whenever he started, he didn't create computers to exist until 1975, then he has an exit, and then he has a good life. That's not how he thought. He was trying to bring, a digital revolution, like bringing personal computers. At that point of time, the IBM CEO said that nobody needs more than 5 computers in the world. And Steve Jobs had a different vision. The future was that every single person has a computer. Now, almost every single person has a computer. And if you don't have a computer, you have a smartphone, which is a mini computer. So the future was there, but it was not the future for the next 5 years. It was the future for the next 50 years. is the future for the next 100 years. You can say all you want, oh, that takes a lot of time. Well, yes, it takes a lot of time. Unfortunately, there's no shortcut right here. We just tend to be in the space in crypto and also some other spaces where the success, for some reason, has a much shorter time frame. For some reason, success has to happen every quarter, every 6 months, every year, every 5 years. And the vision, despite every single company having a mission statement and all this other stuff, and the brand awareness and helping, the Amazon forests, and fighting against CO2 emissions and all inclusive, whatever the hell. In reality, we all know that it's bullshit and most people don't believe in it. Let's just be real. It's all fucking nonsense for the most part. But the true vision, when it does appear, when it does light through, people buy into it. And maybe the biggest example for the vision that most people think is Elon Musk, right? Oh, the guy has a vision to go to Mars, and that vision is good, right? It's very, very futuristic. Whether he believes in it or not, I'm not sure, but people love it, right? Like it's a breath of fresh air when somebody's actually bringing something cool, right? Like something unique. Right? And the fact that I can repeat that, and the fact that most of you guys know that that's his vision, means that that's a very good vision. Like, give me the vision of any other publicly traded company. Give me the vision of Goldman Sachs. What's the vision of JP Morgan? What is the vision of the Federal Reserve? What is the vision of the central bank in your country? To do what? To fight against inflation? To make the economy prosperous? Like, what is the vision? Like, what is the end goal? Right? Nobody fucking knows. Right? Some OKS and KPIs that mean nothing, like some quarterly things that get adjusted and never get met, or maybe they do, like maybe they're, too optimistic and never, get delivered, or too minimalistic, they get delivered all the time. But it's all BS, right? Like, we don't know anything. Now, while people talk about Elon Musk, there are some other visions out there, other groups of projects out there, Web3, non-Web3, that have a pretty strong vision. The biggest one, I think, that gets overlooked is the vision of, you may be surprised, of Harry Potter. That is a huge vision. And nobody's paying attention except for the fan base. And I'm not a huge fan, but, I absolutely kind of, respect great product, which Harry Potter is, and watch it for the next 20 years and you will be surprised. The monopoly of, or the fan base, or whatever you call the tribe, the cult of Harry Potter is going to be increasing year over year. It's a clear vision of hope. Super strong vision. Ask any Harry Potter fan. And there are very strong visions outside of Elon Musk, right? And they take years. Harry Potter took 30 years, right? 35 years to be precise. So the concept of, if you're going to go after VCs, they'll help us pump the fucking token. The token goes up. We cash out or not, get immediate attention from other users. Okay, if that's the goal, sure. And that's the goal of most projects. Our project is not like this. Why? Because we just know that it's a FUD. And we know that for every single project that it would make sense for us to trust us. Like, if we thought, and when we say we, that's council plus team, and definitely some ghost whales for sure. If we thought that a model of pumping the token and then, you make money and then you can do it again is successful, we probably would do it. But because we're also very reasonable. But we just don't know the real statistic. The statistic is for every single, for 5 projects that are successful, there are 5,000 projects that failed doing the same thing, doing those pumps. So don't you think that the overall return of all these pumpers is exceeding 5 to 10% per year? So one guy can make 10,000% gain by doing this, one investor, one hedge fund, And then you have 10,000 other projects that failed, and the hedge funds therefore lost money. And overall, when you average all those, all those 10,000 hedge fund managers and this one winning hedge fund manager, you will get on average to the 5 to 10% return on average. And the question is, do you really want to play this this casino? Because if that's a casino, I'd rather go to Las Vegas and actually have fun losing my money, as opposed to pretending that I'm a business, pretending that we are a decentralized Web3 project, yet still doing the fucking casino. Right? So we here trying to really bring a change. And the more, like, this is not coming from me, that's more coming from the team, who is silent. I'm kind of the spokesperson, but when I see, the amount of hours the team is pulling into the project, in the Ghost, weekends, holidays, after hours, and when I ask them why they're doing this, because they need it, because they see what the world is changing towards. Even Linux, I'll get to Linux in a second, even Linux is getting worse. It's getting all this soy dev shit that didn't exist maybe 2 years ago. So it's getting everywhere. And the only way for us to fight against this, authoritarianship, dictatorship of, the technological regulations, right, is to do something cool. And we're not the only team out there. Trust me, there are lots of teams. There are lots of people who are underground fighting for the change. Monero, Zcash, Bitcoin, Uniswap, right? A lot of projects. Okay, so that's on the VCs. Would love to hear your feedback now or in the, let me check the comments. Maybe somebody wrote something. So Mr. IDK, what's the mission of Goldman Sachs? To make more money. Okay, that's cool. That's a cool. Can I ask you a question? Make more money in what currency? Because if it's in US dollar and US dollar gets gets inflationary, therefore the amount of money they make, gets debased, then I'm making more money, right? Money means nothing. Money is, I know that you're joking, but like, money is how to say, you're not rich because you have a lot of money. You're rich because you have a lot of assets. Money is a tool to, transfer out of one asset and into the next asset. So I know you're joking again, but yeah, it's funny. As if it's unclear to me. Are we going for VC money in our strategy now or not? No, we're not. That's a great question. No, we're not. We never. It's not fair that we never. We engaged interest from VCs when it was there, but we engaged it with massive caution. And for us to proceed with VCs will most likely mean failure as a project, failure as a vision. Because the first thing they'll start doing is they'll say, okay, you know what, privacy is great, but how about we go for regulated privacy? Oh, the team is anonymous, pseudo-anonymous. Oh, that was literally the questions from this gentleman that I spent 10 days with in San Francisco. Oh, team is pseudo-anonymous. That's cool, but VCs still like to see who the team is. So how about you tell them who the team is? Like all this stuff, right? Then what's going to happen, of course, is you need to hire some type of ethics department. Of course, that magically are friends of that VC. So the money, the investments that you received for developing a product, a big chunk of that will go towards that ethics department. And of course, there's definitely some type of backdoor back to that investor, right? Like, it's a business to them. And if you are an unaware startup, good luck with that. You're just ruining your reputation without ever earning it. So when we say VCs or not going to VCs, that means hedge funds, that means VCs themselves, that means exchanges. That sometimes means grants. Lots of grant stories. So this one stablecoin in particular spoke to them 2 weeks ago got a massive grant from Arbitrum, about $2 million. Whether it's true or not, I'm not sure. I didn't check this information, but let's assume that's true. But that's that's not top 3 stable coins, but that's say definitely top 10 stable coins, maybe top 5 stable coins. You guys know that name for sure if you are in the space. And first of all, they only got $2 million. What can you do for $2 million? Like, let's be real. Like, if you hire a team in the US or Europe, $2 million, well, first of all, there may be some tax consequences. Secondly, first of all, the $2 million is not necessarily in cash, it's in token, which is potentially locked, or some type of vesting. Secondly, there are certain deliverables that come with that grant, and the deliverables could significantly outpace the amount of grant. Because if a project gives out the grant, chances are the project cannot complete the deliverable themselves. So you really need to spend that $2 million on the deliverable that you guys agreed upon. Then third is, if it's a US team and heavily regulated, or a European team heavily regulated, look at the salaries in the Web3 space, and that's like a salary for a team for a year. Literally. That's it. With 0 responsibilities. And if the team magically does not deliver, you're kind of screwed. One specific example is this one project we worked with. We really wanted to onboard them for Ghost. They got a grant for $50,000, not $50 million, $50,000 from Solana, and the goal for that $50,000 was to design a bridge between Solana and Ethereum. I mean, that's completely fucking unrealistic, especially since that team knew nothing about bridging. But whatever. So that's just the state of the industry. Mr. IDK, can I assume that the funding comes from the products Ghost develops? Can I assume then that funding comes from the products Ghost develops and building the community engagement and new council? And if I'm correct, how do you see that playing out? Can I assume that the funding comes? Let me just try to understand. Since the funding comes from the products Ghost develops and building the community engagement and new council. So at this point of time, how this works is we sell seats for the council, and the structure of that comes as a development agreement. So every single council seat, so every single council seat is typically going for a specific product, and every single development agreement therefore lists very specific deliverables. Like there's a contract agreement, plus there's a whole 20-page deliverables of kind of with heavy description of what that is, diagrams, etc. So we structure this as a development agreement, and we are funding the products with the seats, but everything else is not covered by the seat. So at this point of time, for example, also bring more clarity in case you guys don't know, like marketing, not covered by any seats. So that's like Cosmos is doing this. Why? Because he loves the project. Doesn't get paid. Right? Community. We do this, like whoever does it. Well, first of all, we have great community admins. So we have Prime, who's been helping us significantly. Federal has been helping us significantly as well. So we have admins like that. Zafir as well. Not an admin per se, but huge help. Kitsune has been helping a little bit idle right now, but has been helping significantly. I'm not even mentioning the other council members like Gozer, Mr. IDK yourself, right? So, but yes, like community stuff, doing Twitter, Medium, articles, guides, all that stuff is not covered by the seats. That's just, the community is doing. Essentially, the community consisting of council members, Ghost Whales, and just community at large is doing this. And that's why it's a grassroots movement. And yes, it's difficult. And that's why we need to be very understanding for those people who actually help. For example, BizDev is done by Cosmos. Well, let me put Cosmos as number 2, but number 1 will be Ghost Viking. So he's been significant help when it comes down to BizDev, connecting us to a bunch of chains, projects, and still doing that. And it's not easy because there's right, there's some misalignment sometimes, but it happens. Like the relationships get built, the introductions happen. Far from every single introduction works out. It's a tough job to do, to get to these introductions in the first place. It's then a tough job to convert these introductions to anything. So it's just, it's just the state of doing business, right? It's very challenging, but it's happening. So, and we need to, of course, pay dues, at least in terms of saying thank you to those people who actively involved. Same thing applies to the team, right? So, little let you guys know that, for example, for the Ghost chain that has been developed, the original version has been developed in November 2021. Little that you guys know, okay, yes, the design from essentially Ghost Bridge 1.0 to Ghost Bridge 2.0, that stuff we essentially raised the seats. The team had to essentially get these seats because we didn't get other councils, so we had to cover those seats ourselves. That's fine, for example. But so that was fine for the design itself. So okay, fine. But little did you guys know, for example, that Substrate decided to update from one version to the next version, which made 70% of the code base that has been developed from November 2021 obsolete. So we had to maintain and bring this up. And we did not open a seat for that. But the development team has been just, essentially doing this stuff on the back end for 3 or 4 months. You guys just don't know about this, right? So, and it's not that the code base was bad or whatever. It's just Substrate decided to update. And now we have to update everything. So, of course, when it comes down to the chain, we need to understand the amount of effort and work that comes into it. And if we all believe in this project, we need to really develop this project, right? And maybe that's what inspired us to bring the chain a little bit earlier, as opposed to just waiting on Ghost Auction or kind of doing the Ghost DAO. The idea was to, let's just bring the chain as fast as we possibly can after we check this with you guys, because we will see the level of engagement from this chain, and we will also bridge from theoretical conversations to more practical, because you will see how hard it is. You will see how hard it is to run a fucking node. Like it's not easy, right? Like, how to say, it's not going to be super challenging, but it's not going to be easy. It's not like charging your phone. It requires work. And imagine if running a node is difficult, how difficult it was to develop the chain. Like it's like 1,000 times more difficult. Like the development team, again, they're not very vocal, but these guys are. Everybody says how the development team they have is fucking genius and they never do shit. They just for some reason, genius development team. But the Ghost team developed essentially Ghost Chain 1.0, Ghost DAO, Ghost Auction, Ghost Airdrop Bot, a Ghost Chain version 2.0, plus with all the updates of Solidity and Substrate and all this fun stuff within 3 years? Ask any other team what actual deliverables did they do on a budget that we have. Ask. And today I spent 4 or 5 hours with Cosmos trying to figure out Linux. Like we're talking Linux, which is a third, most popular, if not probably third, right? Most popular operating system after Windows and Mac OS. They don't have any fucking guides. There's nothing. It's crazy. And we love Linux. I mean, we'll never criticize Linux, but fuck, like, bring guides, like, for fuck's sake, like, nothing is there. It's the third largest operating system. How many developers work on it? Insane. Yes, it's open source, I get it, but how many developers work on that? Insane. And then you look at our SWAT team of developers who develop so many freaking products in 3 years on no budget. Like, whatever we get from the seats is nothing. Okay, that was a little bit of explanation. Mr. Adike, thank you for the explanation. Please pass on a huge thank you to everyone, the team, council, and community for the hard work. Yes, absolutely. They're all here. They're all listening. And thank you so much, Mr. Adike, as well for plugging in. Okay, we have 10 more minutes. So I wanted to stop on the VCs a little bit before, but since we got to this, it's fine. Let me now get to something more interesting. You guys see it. Okay, so the dev team on Cosmos working like animals, like beasts, on setting up the chain. So what's happening is the testnet version 1.0, limited edition, super limited edition is there. Cosmos is running 2 nodes. Maybe not Cosmos, somebody's running 2 nodes. And then the idea is for all of us to start connecting to that network. The connection to that network is not going to be static. What do I mean by that? It's not going to be stable. What do I mean by that? You will be connecting to the testnet for maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe for a couple of hours, and that's it. So the whole exercise at this point of time is for anybody who's ready to get the machine, whether through their personal computers or hopefully new computers or just machines. I'll explain you what I did, and of course we'll come out with this full document, full guide. It's going to be a living document, so it's going to be updated and stuff like that. We're going to be sharing that sometime middle of next week, middle of this week, therefore, like in 4 or 5 days. So it will have the requirements for the machine and essentially the instructions for how to download stuff. But my personal experience so far of trying to connect is, of course, it's not going to be super easy, but it's going to be educational. So a couple of steps. Step 1, starting mid of next week, anybody will be able to become the first 3 people to join the network for 5 or 10 minutes. And the whole point will be just to check if the connectivity works from different countries. So we tested a couple of countries already. That's great. There's a differentiation between types of nodes. There's a validator node, there's a light node, there's a boot node. The boot node is the node that has the code base, and we need to make sure that we have as many boot nodes as possible in different parts of the world to make sure that whoever joins from that specific country or region can always rely to the closely located boot node. So we want everybody, all of us, to be boot node holders, and that's what we're going to be supporting. Validator nodes, that's on top of that. That's for you not to get diluted. But boot nodes, we need to make sure we have a lot to again ensure new users to be joining the network easily. My experience. So next week we open the instructions to everybody. The first 3 people who are able to get through the instructions and actually work everything out get the chance to connect to the network. After the first 3 people do this, we then slowly move to the next phase. And after the first 3 people do this, then we essentially, the rest of the ghosties, you guys will also have a chance to connect. But then we'll move forward, right? Because we need to move fast. So, the sooner you join, the better, because the sooner you join, the more assistance from us you'll be able to receive. If you wait longer, it's going to be a lot less assistance because we're going to be busy with other things. We're going to be busy with the Explorer, with the wallet, with the bridging, with GhostDAO. Like, there's a lot of freaking things. And if you come later, you will have to be relying more on the community support as opposed to like the team support. So the sooner you come in, the better. And then probably, like by the end of September, most of us who want to test being able to be a boot node, you will be able to test it. And then starting in October, we'll slowly move to the next phase. Right? So that's kind of the plan. Now, minimum requirements of the machine, etc. presented here. Don't buy the machines yet. Like, it's still work in progress, but we'll share this document again middle of next week. Let me share my experience. My personal experience is I bought a box, a separate box, $250. I bought a separate keyboard actually today, $10. I had a separate mouse, right? Remote mouse, wireless mouse. So I had that, so I didn't have to buy it. If you do have to buy it, that's another $20. Then I had to buy a cable, find a cable. Then you have to have a remote screen because you need to connect that specific box to the screen. So I had a remote screen with me. I'm traveling, but I had a remote screen with me. But I didn't have a cable, so I had to buy a cable. So cable cost like another $10, right? So my setup, let's assume the remote screen is the remote screen is quite expensive for me because it's remote. It's like probably $300. But if you do have just a basic remote screen, it's going to cost you like $20, $100, whatever. So the whole setup that I have, maybe $500 total. It would have been easier to buy a cheap laptop, to be honest, right? That's like a separate box, right? So again, we're just experimenting. And the more we experiment, the better we'll get. Like, so kind of the idea that I have in mind is, and I think the rest of the team have in mind is, we'll go with the cheapest option first, but the cheapest option that is more or less repeatable, right? So of course we can go buy a Razer computer for $3,000 right away, but that's not what most ghost whales are able to afford. Council members, sure, but I'm talking about ghost whales. Not necessarily able to afford, especially, they need to see that, the network is growing, right? But as the network is growing, people will get more and more confidence to buy more sophisticated machines, right? So therefore the setup has to be quite funky. And again, the cost of the setup is most of you guys will have a remote keyboard. Most of you guys will have a mouse, like in any case, right? So it has to with a USB-A type of port. So most of you have it anyways. Most of you will have a remote screen for sure. Most of you will just have a laptop, right? That you can use for the purposes of this. So, but if you don't, like I kind of don't have like a second laptop with me, I'm traveling. The box is more, portable. So the box plus, for me, like the box plus also the USB drive. The box, the USB drive, the keyboard, and a cable. I spent maybe $300 on that total. That's my setup for Node. So that's first of all, like as far as hardware, that's one. Secondly, now can you use virtual servers? Yes, you can. Not ideal. Not ideal. Let's go hardcore. Let's actually freaking build a network. Second thing is Linux. Messing with that. So there are multiple versions of Linux. There's Ubuntu, there's Debian. So Ubuntu is easier. I believe Cosmos is on Ubuntu, so that thing worked way, way better, way easier, but it's kind of less stable, potentially more buggy down the road, etc. So the dev team is obviously Debian, because they're hardcores, and then I'm trying to do Debian. And of course, Debian is a pain in the ass. Pain in the ass. So if you guys are more more normies, so let's put it differently, like myself, I may give up and actually do Ubuntu. But Ubuntu should work better and faster and easier. But ideally, we stick with Debian because we are all hardcore motherfuckers. And yes, we mess with it. And yes, it's not that easy, but we'll try to be providing all the YouTubes, all the kind of, not the YouTubes that we record, but rather kind of the Linux educational YouTube videos that will help you guys do what needs to happen. For example, currently the biggest problem is when you download Debian on a box, like imagine a box, like a separate computer. You download the Debian through the USB drive. So you have you have your working laptop, you download Debian on it, you then flash it to the USB. So far, so good. So now you have the ISO file, which is essentially the operating system. It's stored on your USB drive. Great. You then move that operating system to your Node device. In my case, that's a box. So I move that there. Perfect. Everything is working so far, so good. The problem is I need to download additional drivers. How does it work? For me to download additional drivers, I need to connect to the Wi-Fi. And then I can download them from the cloud. But I don't have a Wi-Fi driver, so my box doesn't recognize a Wi-Fi. How convenient. So for me to download additional drivers, I need to have Wi-Fi. But for me to download the Wi-Fi, I need to download the Wi-Fi driver, but I don't have Wi-Fi to download it. So I need to then somehow move this on the USB drive. And if you think that's easy, it's supposed to be easy, but it's not fucking easy. If you think that there are any tutorials on that, maybe, but we couldn't find any good one. Mr. Adike, you mentioned you're traveling, right? So yeah, that's going to be like a challenge. Well, again, if you set this up in your home, like once you set it up once, then it's easy. And for us, what we need to make sure, like for those 3 people, and then for kind of the rest of the people who want to run a node, once you have a setup and connect to the network for 5 to 10 minutes or whatever, or maybe 2 to 3 hours, you are 95% complete. You downloaded an operating system, you installed it, you uploaded the latest client of the Ghost Chain node, and then if that client changes, it's easy. It's like a couple of commands and you're there. You already have everything figured out. But the first setup of downloading the operating system, uploading this on your machine, plus then downloading the node, that is a pain in the freaking ass. And the sooner we do this all, the better. And yes, you'll be complaining how shit it is, how user experience is bad for Linux. And yet Linux is the 3rd most usable, probably if not the 2nd, operating system. And with what Windows is doing right now, chances are we'll be switching to Linux more and more and more and more, because Linux is just so much more, more flexible, more customizable, and less regulated. Let's put it this way. And doesn't track everything you do, like Windows. So far my experience is lots of cursing, out of Linux and how they should potentially jump off the bridge, because there's no fucking tutorials. But it's a work in progress, and it's going to be a work in progress for everybody, for all of us. And then once we achieve that, you guys will realize why every single node is priced at $11 million, because nobody wants to do this. Because what Solana will do, for example, not quoting Solana per se, but a chain like Solana, what they will do, they'll just do, they'll hire one admin, and for this one admin, they can essentially, buy 10,000 machines, and this admin just maintains 10,000 machines, pretending that those machines are node operators. And then they will try to participate in valuation, saying, oh, we have 1,000 nodes, each node is $10 million, our valuation is whatever, 10 billion, we're huge. But is it real? And for us, it will be real. Why? Because we just don't have the budget for 10,000 fucking machines ourselves. So you guys will have to run it, and we will have to run it. And that's the value of the network. So this is actual advantage to us. On this note, I don't think there are any questions. If there are, please shoot them to the Ghost Wheels. Really appreciate this morning. This week is going to be instrumental. You guys will have a chance to finally connect to the network. This is going to be huge. And I will be messing and cursing over the weekend, and I'll figure it out as well, hopefully. And if not, I'll figure it out by next week. And if not, I'll figure it out in the next 2 weeks. But I'll figure it out for sure. And all of us will figure it out for sure. All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy your week, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.